Chapter number 5 of Fairylands of the South Seas. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mike Vendetti. Chapter 5. A Memory of Mauke. We sighted Mauke at dawn. The cabin lamp was still burning when the boy brought my coffee. I drank it, lit a cigarette, and went on deck in a pirogue. The skipper himself was at the wheel. Half a dozen men were in the shrouds. The native passengers were sitting forward, cross-legged in little groups, munching ship biscuit and gazing ahead for the expected land. The day broke wild and gray, with clouds scuttling low over the sea in squalls of rain. Since we had left Mageena the day before, it had blown heavily from the southeast. A big sea was running, but in spite of 60 tons of copra, the schooner was reeling off the knots in racing style, running almost free, with the winds well aft of the beam, rising interminably in the back of each passing sea, and taking the following slope with a swoop and a rush. We had no log. It was difficult to guess our position within a dozen miles. The low, driving clouds surrounding us like a curtain made it impossible to see more than a few hundred yards. Until an observation could be obtained, the landfall was a matter of luck and guesswork. Our course had been laid almost due north-northeast, to pass a little to the west of Mauke, which gave us the chance of rising Mialto or Aitu if we missed the first island. But ocean currents are uncertain things, and with a horizon limited to less than half a mile, nothing would be easier than to slip past the trio of low islands and into the stretch of lonely ocean beyond. Every trading skipper is accustomed to face such situations. One can only maintain a sharp lookout and hold on one's course until there is an opportunity to use a sextant, or until it becomes obvious that the land has been passed. A squall of rain drove down on us for 5 minutes while we shivered and the scuppers ran fresh water. Our narrow circle of vision was blotted out. Then suddenly, with the effect of a curtain drawn aside, the clouds broke to the east, flooding the sea with light. A shout went up. Close ahead and to starboard, so near that we could see the white breakers on the reef, was Mauke, densely wooded to the water's edge, a palm top rising here and there above the thick bush of ironwoods. Next moment the curtain descended. Gray clouds and rearing seas surrounded us. It was as though we had seen a vision of the land, unreal as the blue lakes seen at midday on the desert. But the skipper was shouting orders in harsh Mangyan. The schooner was swinging up into the wind. The blocks were clicking and purring as half a dozen boys swayed on the main sheet. Presently the land took vague form through the mist of squalls. We were skirting the reef obliquely, drawing nearer the breakers as the settlement came in view. A narrow boat passage, into which an ugly surf was breaching, had been blasted through the hard coral of the reef. A path led up the sloping land beyond, between a double row of canoe houses, to the bush. A few people were gathering by the canoe houses. It was evident that we had just been sighted, and that it would be some time before a boat could be put out, if indeed the boatmen were willing to risk the surf. Meanwhile we could only stand off and on until they came out to us, for the skipper had no intention of risking his ship's boat and the lives of his men on such a forbidding shore. "Aurori," he sang out, dwelling long on the last syllable of this Cook Island version of Hard Aloi. The schooner rounded into the wind with a ponderous deliberation calculated to make the nerves of a fair-weather sailor twitch. She seemed to hesitate, like a fat and fluttering grandmother. At last, after an age of bobbing and ducking into the head seas, while boom tackles were made fast and headsails backed, she made up her mind and filled away on the port tack. Riley, the American coconut planter, who was recruiting labor for the season on his island, turned to me with a wink. "If this old hooker was mine," he remarked in a voice meant to reach the skipper's ears, "I'd start the engine every time I came about. She can't sail fast enough to keep steerage way." The skipper sniffed a British sniff. They are old friends. "If this damn fine schooner was yours," he observed, without turning his head, "she'd have been piling up long ago, like as not in broad daylight on an island 1,000 feet high." Riley chuckled. "Too early for an argument," he said. "Let's go below and have a drink." I have not often run across a more interesting man than Riley. Thrown together as he and I have been in circumstances which make for an unusual exchange of confidence, I have learned more of him in 2 months than one knows of many an old acquaintance at home. At 35 years of age, he is a living object lesson for those who bewail the old days of adventure and romance, and wish that their lives had been cast in other times. His blood is undiluted Irish. He has the humor, the imagination, the quick sympathy of the race, without the Irish heritage of instability. Born in South Boston, and reared with only the sketchiest of educations, he set out to make his way in the world at an age when most boys are playing marbles, and looking forward with dread to the study of algebra. For 15 years he wandered, gathering a varied background of experience. He worked in mills. He drifted west and shipped as cabin boy on vessels plying the Great Lakes. He drifted further west to become a rider of the range. Finally he reached San Francisco and took to the sea. He has been a sealer, an Alaska fisherman, an able-bodied seaman on square riggers sailing strange seas. He has seen Cape Horn and the Cape of Good Hope. He speaks of the ports of India, China, Africa, the Java Sea, as you would speak of Boston or New York. In the days when a line of schooners ran from San Francisco to Tahiti, touching at the Marquesas on the way, he felt a call to the South Seas, and shipped for a round trip before the mast. When he returned to San Francisco, a change seemed to have come over him. The old wandering life had lost its charm, had gone flat and stale. Like many another, he had eaten of the wild plantain, unaware. The evenings of carousal ashore no longer tempted him, even the long afternoons of reading, for reading has always been this curious fellow's chief delight, stretched on his bed in a sailor's boarding-house, had lost their flavor. The print blurred before his eyes, and in its place he saw islands of savage loveliness rising from a warm blue sea, shadowy and mysterious valleys strewn with the relics of a forgotten race. The dark eyes of a girl in Towhee. Remember that Riley was both a sailor and an Irishman, a rough idealist, keenly susceptible to beauty and the sense of romance. It is stated that the men who live romance are seldom aware of it. This may be true, though I doubt it. Certainly in Riley's case the theory does not work out. He is the most modest of men, untainted by a hint of egoism in his stories, superbly told with the Irish gift for circumstantial detail and dramatic effect. The teller's part is always small, and yet as one listens, thrilled by the color and artistry of the tale, one is all the while aware that this man appraises his memories at their full value, reviews them with a ripened gusto and ever-fresh appreciation. In short, he is one of those fortunate or unfortunate men for whom realities, as most of us know them, do not exist. Men whose eyes are incapable of seeing drab or gray, who find mystery and fresh beauty in what we call the commonplace. It is scarcely necessary to say that Riley was aboard the next schooner bound south for the islands. Nukuhiva knew him for a time, but the gloom and tragedy of that land, together with an episode of domestic infidelity, were overpowering to a man of his temperament. From the Marquesas he went to Tahiti, and his wanderings ended in the Cook group, 600 miles to the west. Perhaps the finding of his journey's end wrought the change. Perhaps it was due to his rather practical Tahitian wife. In any case, the wanderer ceased to rove. The spendthrift began to save and plan. In the groups to the eastward he had picked up a smattering of coconut lore. It was not long before he got a berth as superintendent of a small plantation. With a native wife and the Irishman's knack for language, he soon mastered the dialect of his group. He is one of a very few men who